So when we talk about the quality of protein, what does that actually mean? And how do we achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is interesting when we start to look at populations around the world, and we could probably even expand this to just the overall diet quality, like the quality of the entire diet, because the conversation, one of the reasons why we tend to fear animal protein is because if we increase saturated fat in the diet, we can increase LDL cholesterol, which is quote unquote the bad cholesterol. And that plays an important role in the progression of atherosclerosis, which is the narrowing of the arteries, which predisposes you more to heart attacks and strokes. And so, heck, that's not good. We don't want that, right? Now, there's a lot of nuance in this whole story because, first off, we often hear steak, eggs, dairy, watch out, they're high saturated fat foods. They certainly do contain some, but almonds contain double, 2.5 times as many saturated fats as a 100-gram serving of steak. And you don't hear, people saying, well, listen, almonds are going to cause you problems, or dark chocolate or whatnot. And so, the foods that are richest in saturated fat are things like pizza, grain-based desserts, sausages, hamburgers, all these processed meats and processed foods. And so, that's the first place that we look at. But it gets even more interesting when you look at the countries around the world, because there are certain countries that have removed this upper limit, which in America, we still have this upper limit that says you should only consume 10% of your total caloric intake from saturated fats. If you go above that, it can be a problem. Now, it gets interesting because you go to Spain, and by 2040, the Spanish will be the longest living people on the planet, and they eat more than 10% saturated fat. You think, okay, maybe that's a one-off. Well, you go to France, same thing, one of the longest living countries in the world. They also consume more than 10%. And this is the notion where diet quality matters. Like if your saturated fat's coming from real food, from steak and eggs and these types of things, and you're eating a lot of vegetables and whole foods, it looks as though that's not as big an adverse impact, right? You're not going to have this adverse cardiovascular effect because we see, in places like Spain and France, 32 or 38 deaths per 100,000 from heart attack, whereas in the United States, we see almost 80, right? So more than double. And this is the idea where if your saturated fats are coming from all those ultra processed foods, right? Like the takeout pizza, the quick hamburger, the sausage, and you're overweight, this creates the perfect storm for all these bad issues to happen. And so, if you're someone listening in and you don't like to eat meat or you don't want to eat meat, we don't tell you this to force it upon you. But I think too often I see people who are overweight who are avoiding these foods because they think it's quote unquote bad for them. But an effect of that is we don't achieve the protein intake, and the foods that they choose to eat actually have a lot more calories in them. And now if we're not losing weight, then we're not going to be improving blood sugars. We're not going to be lowering inflammation. And this is where we get into a real problem, because now we're really stuck, and that risk is not going to go down.